the government, IAUM3 in opposition, and the motion this House regrets the high priority given the sports in the national consciousness. It's a great pleasure to invite the first speaker, the Prime Minister, to start this debate.
Mr. Speaker, something is going wrong. In Argentina, for example, they're actually building millions and millions of dollars stadium while the economy is actually going down. The government is telling people that, hey, we're actually doing good. In South Africa, for example, in last year, they're actually hosting the FIFA World Cup while they're actually building those stadiums on the land that the poor people are actually living in, telling the world that there is no poor people in that case. We also see the NGO coming out protest in that case. We also see the example of the US where American football and the NBA is such a big issue, and 70% of the teenagers do not even know why America is actually invading Iraq to begin with. And also in the case of Italy, where Gaucho Silva is actually the very big deal, and the people are actually saying that they are actually doing good, while the government is actually being in a high debt in the under the status quo. So we see that is something wrong in today's debate that we need to actually talk about. So I'm going to be talking about, we're actually regretting the very high priority given to those kind of sports in the national consciousness. So let's talk about the definition here. Talking about the word regret, we actually disagree. The idea of the sport being put in the very high priority, say for example, in the newsletter, the television, or the radio broadcast, that a very high proportion of sport by actually ignoring the fact that the current issue is actually going on. We are not going to ban those kind of sports. We are actually allowing sport to actually happen and continue to actually happen in the country. We are not debating whether or not the sport is good or bad. We agree on the fact that in certain areas sport are good, but we're not going to put the sport in the very highest priority in our nation, since we see that there are other issues that are affecting lives of people in our nations. Say for example, economy, say for example, national security, say for example, human security. So I'm the first speaker. I'll be talking about why sport should not be the highest priority in national consciousness, and why other important issues which affect the living or the lives of people in the country should be the higher priority. And I'll be also talking about the development in terms of democracy and how our proposal is actually going to open the floor for further discussion to solve the problem for the country, and how it's going to improve in terms of the education and intellectual society. My second speaker will come up here and talk to you about the benefit in the bigger perspective in this case. And before I go on to my argument, yes please.
Under your paradigm, how much priority exactly will you be giving to sports?
That is why we're talking in terms of how we're going to grant them the very priority. We say under the status quo, the newsletter and those kind of television, radio broadcasts, as I told you, that the government is actually telling to the world that we're actually doing fine, we have those kind of multi-million-dollar teams, sport teams. We're not going to actually ban those kind of sport. We allow you to actually have those kind of sport, but we're not going to put you in the very highest priority. We're also going to give you the space to actually broadcast the idea or the issues of those kind of economy, national security, and human security in this case. So let's talk about the first argument here, about why sport should not be the highest priority in this case. So ladies and gentlemen, government cannot distort the current situation by actually putting the sport, every hour on the media, telling that, oh, our team has actually won over that country, our team has actually lost. We actually have to have more space for the current situation in terms of economy, national security, and human security. In that case, we cannot say that the country is actually running fine while the economy is actually going down, telling the people that our economy is nothing wrong with our economy. we actually see that in the idea of putting the sport in the very high priority, it will lead to the people who will not be able to actually be aware much of the current situation. We believe in terms of economy, national security, and human security, especially in terms of the poverty and how they live their life in every daily basis, is the bigger issues that affect their life that need to be solved at the end. So we believe that those kind of issues should actually be the very priority for the media, for the government to actually put more emphasis on in that case. So moving on to my second argument about the development in terms of democracy and how it's going to open the floor for further discussion to solve the problem for the countries. Ladies and gentlemen, say for example in Italy, where the government is actually controlling all the media, say for example Berlusconi, who is the prime minister, telling the people that the economy is actually going fine, the Gaucho Serie A is working well, Inter Milan, AC Milan, those kind of teams are actually buying millions of dollars to actually spend on buying the soccer player, while the economy is actually going down. We see something wrong here, that the government cannot distort the fact that the economy is going down by putting the sport as a highlight that, no, we're not doing good, don't come out and protest me because the country is running fine. We see that there's something wrong over there. We're actually introducing you the idea that other issues should be the priority in terms of the check and balance, how the people can actually have the kind of access to this kind of information in order for people to actually have the platform to comment or even suggest to the policymaker in order to solve those kind of problems. And we see the problems of economy, of the poverty, and human security, and those kind of things are very major issues that the government should be focusing on, not focusing priority or prioritize at the very first place for sport. As I have to guarantee you again that we are not banning all kind of sport in this case, but we have to put the very priority in the case that the issues that are affecting lives of people in their daily basis. So ladies and gentlemen, I've proved to you that we are actually regret or disagree with the idea that the sport should be the highest priority. We do not know how much the percent would that be, but at the end, the other issues should be the highest percent for the media at the very end, because we believe that those issues are actually affecting these people and should be prioritized. So with this, we are proud to propose.
Right, thank you very much. Thanks, speaker, for your speech. And now I invite the first speaker of opposition, the leader of opposition.
We don't regret the high priority given to sports because our position is that we believe the benefits of sports cannot be compromised. We have 3 points today. 3 points. I will be talking about how it promotes unity and under sub-level national unity and also international interest. My second speaker, Jabir, here will talk about the economic benefit of sports and how it is a celebration of human physique as his second point. So before I start, please allow me to rebut some of the government's points. They have mentioned about how in Argentina, millions of dollars are spent on building stadiums. But they forget to realize that the Argentinian football club in itself brings far more money to the country than it is in spending making that one stadium, ladies and gentlemen. Because Argentina is a worldwide recognized leader in football, ladies and gentlemen. They've talked about how in South Africa, the FIFA World Cup used land or entrenched on the land of poor people to make stadiums. Yes, but we believe that's not the problem of sports, that's the problem of government administration, because it is illegal in the first place. That is not the problem of sports. They've also then mentioned how NGOs have come up to highlight this plight. But then again, we should realize that the reason why these NGOs have highlighted the plight of oppression of the poor is because of sports, ladies and gentlemen. They forget to realize that. They say that they want to limit newsletter and radio broadcasts, but they forget that it is the people who want these broadcasts. These broadcasts are brought up because the people want them. We think the papers provide what the people want. They are suppressing the freedom of press, ladies and gentlemen. We don't think that's right. They've talked about how sports brings economic downturn. We don't think so. Sports is a multi-billion-dollar industry that creates jobs and inflows of money. That is just irrelevant and redundant. They've not mentioned us how limiting sports will immediately make people aware of world problems. We think that's a floodgate argument that is not sustainable, ladies and gentlemen. We think that world information is still at large. There is no limit of information because sports dominates, ladies and gentlemen. Information is not a sort of ball that has a limitation on quota. For example, 30% sports, 70% this, ladies and gentlemen. It's expandable. So going to what we are going to say. We think that the level of priority, have a seat, not yet, level of priority of sports right now is high, but the heavy emphasis does not neglect other areas, ladies and gentlemen. We think the emphasis is proportionate to the benefits, the many benefits that sports brings, ladies and gentlemen. We don't stop mandatory education because sports is there. We do it simultaneously, ladies and gentlemen. Why is sports so important? Despite the fact that it's fun, it's also healthy in two levels. Physical, on the mind and body, because countries understand that physical well-being, have a seat, is important. And the second is the mental well-being that sports bring, ladies and gentlemen. The notion of team spirit and working together, the notion of healthy competition, the notion of good sportsmanship, ladies and gentlemen. We know that every society, since time immemorial, has recognized the importance of sport, ladies and gentlemen, because it is embedded in humanity. We think sports is about healthy competition, it's about giving your best, and the power of sports is united by a common interest, and it is so integral in society because of that. Now let's take a look at how sports promotes unity. But before that, yes,
please. We're actually not debating on whether or not sport is good or bad. We actually accept and agree on the very first place that sport do certain goods, but we actually accept and debating on a motion whether it should be prioritized.
I think your 15 seconds is up. The reason why I emphasize on the importance of sports is because I have to tell you that sports is so important, which is why the high priority is justified. And because of that justification of priority, there are many benefits. This is a proper linkage. Government, you might want to learn from this, right? So let's take a look at promotion of unity on the national level. Let's take a look at South African rugby team. You know, they've just gone through the whole apartheid thing a few years ago, a significant amount of years ago. My history is very bad. But then again, we know that the whites and blacks of South Africa would root for their South African rugby team regardless of colour. It shows that race can be put aside in the spirit of patriotism, ladies and gentlemen. If countries promote this sport, they would promote training. And when you have good training, you have a good team. And if you want to have a good team, you do very well, ladies and gentlemen. And that's when people support you. That's when, for example, the Malaysian people as a whole supported the Malaysian team when they won, for example, ladies and gentlemen. For example, if France were to win the World Cup, you notice France and Italy were to go up in the World Cup. You notice that half the world would support France and the other half support Italy. It shows that we can be able to accept and support other countries as well, ladies and gentlemen, for the spirit of competition, ladies and gentlemen. Let's take a look at how sports is a national identity, because many of us link sports to the country. For example, when you say China, you think, for example, badminton, ladies and gentlemen. You think about cricket and you think Pakistan, ladies and gentlemen. Because these sports are the national identity of that culture. People relate to it. Not only the people of that nationality, but people of other nationalities, ladies and gentlemen. We think it is part of their culture that is so intrinsic. Like many African countries, little boys from the age of 2 play this sport, ladies and gentlemen. If we remove the emphasis on this, we remove an important aspect of society, we are forcibly removing a part of who they are, ladies and gentlemen. In Cameroon, for example, a country where it's poor and there's no sort of very few symbols of national identity, they look to their sports team because their sports team has gone to the World Cup and is very good, ladies and gentlemen. In Jamaica, they look to Usain Bolt as a symbol of their unity, ladies and gentlemen. We've talked about how problems have been highlighted. For example, the NGO, ladies and gentlemen. Also, a basketball player in America went overseas to play sports, and he noticed about how many of the kids there died of malaria. He went back to his country and said, you know what, we have to do something about this. And what he started Nothing for Nets, an organization that gave malaria nets so people don't die, ladies and gentlemen. All this came out because of sports, ladies and gentlemen. Let's take a look at the national interest. Let's look at the Olympics. What was the Olympics for? Back in the day, so all these warring Grecian states would stop warring for once every 4 years in order to have sports for national interest. We don't think that stopped. Let's look at 1936 in Germany, ladies and gentlemen. Right before the tension of World War II was going to go up, all these countries still, despite their tensions, managed to go to Germany and have an Olympics, ladies and gentlemen. Sports stops war. That's why the emphasis is so important. We've seen how a Brazilian football player, Pelé, managed to stop 2 warring countries because everyone wanted to see him play, ladies and gentlemen. That is important. We think when you meet others, people get together, ladies and gentlemen. There's a form of mutual understanding. We think it's important for diplomacy, ladies and gentlemen. We see how Manmohan Singh and Musharraf, 2 countries, India and Pakistan, that don't get along with each other. Manmohan Singh invited Musharraf to come over and say, hey, let's have a cup of tea while we talk about cricket or watch cricket, ladies and gentlemen. This is an incentive on peace talks negotiation. Maybe not much, but you have to start somewhere. And we think this is a good place to start, ladies and gentlemen. In World War II, we think it is an outlet, a connection to build ties, ladies and gentlemen, because sports is one of common interest and friendship. You don't see that individual as an evil threat, but as an individual. It removes all barriers and you expect that person as a human being, ladies and gentlemen. And because of this mutual respect, we are proud to oppose. Thank you.
Right, then the speaker for her speech, then invite the second speaker of governments now, that we try to.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the opposition come up with something that we don't think is not even mutually exclusively outside. We all totally agree what is the benefit of sport. But what we think that we should debate today is that they should come up and prove to us that how they prioritize sport over economy, over social welfare is going to be better at the end of the day, because we don't think that is the way to go. We don't think that is the way to go, ladies and gentlemen. We think that it's not. We think that the sport should not be the highest priority. We think that it's good. It creates many benefits to society. But we think it's just the main proportion. So we all agree that the problem are here. That I say that there should be more proportion of the other issues in the media, as we say in the case of Italy, when the government has control and they control the media, the amount of their spread more amount of sports in the news than there should be about the economy. That's why it's swaying the problem. We have given you the example of Argentina, when the government actually encouraging more sports, nationalistic and sport, and while the government is corrupting, prioritizing the private sector, and then at the end of the day, the economy collapses and the government just leave the country. And that in that time, it's even too late for the government to realize, for the people to realize what had happened. What we say that is actually the problem about Argentina that they come up and talk about. We think that the problem before the economic crisis is that the government created lots of large, huge stadiums throughout the country and the province, and huge amount of, it's mega project, huge amount of money, by not solving the economic problem. And at the end, those stadiums is not used. Those stadiums are left, ladies and gentlemen, because it's too big. It's not necessary, but just because the government wants to make it pride, it looks good for the government to make popularity that the government is supporting the sport. That's it. And at the end, it doesn't solve any problem. It's not doing any good to the people, and doesn't bring any money as they come and say it's kind of flawed. The first rebuttal is about how this kind of health, how it's going to actually prioritize the social problem under their case. We're not saying that sport has no activity, has no good at all. We're saying it's just that the problem of media, that there should be more attention, because we think that attention is important, because when there is no important, people don't know about it, they don't discuss about it, that there is no voice of people raising this case, and there is no discussion. Since there is no discussion, no voice of people to the government won't solve the problem. And that we think that the national security should come first. So first of all, my argument is about the role of all party in the state that should be involved. Our stand is that we think that now the government should bring about a better change for its people. Government is now swaying and distorting with the real problem and turning people away from real problems. And it's not at the table and it's remained unsolved as you try to put the attention to some other thing that's not necessarily important. But you leave something happen, just like South Africa, that you prioritize the pride before the living of the people, when you have millions of people having famine, having diseases, not living in good condition. But you just come up and talk about sport. So how it has better, ladies and gentlemen? Answer me. How is that having a big stadium better than kicking millions of people out?
If you said media is important, but media is not important, but if there's no media, then sports does not get exposure, people don't play, then all the benefits of sports is
We say that media can still talk about sport, but we don't think it's priority. It shouldn't be on the news, on the front line every day, just that the case that's happening that was happening in Argentina. That is the case. We say it's okay, you have sport, but you should talk more about that, not just the government is trying to sway the attention. So we think now, as first of all, the responsibility of the media, which I would answer. We think that the people give the authority, give the function of the media as a messenger of the people, that they should tell the people what is going on. That's why we watch TV. We trust that they're going to tell us the truth, not the tool of the government to lie to the people, ladies and gentlemen. It's just that we think that in the case of Italy and Argentina in the past, they're not functioning and make people we think as a people cannot just go anywhere and look what's happening. They rely on media. So if media is lying, people don't know what's the problem. People don't know what is the attention that they should talk on. People now, under our case, need to see more media talking about the real problem, about Africa. They should come up and talk about problem other than they say, well, the race of white and black can play together. We think that the problem is the black is still there, even they play the united. If you don't bring about change by giving more attention to them, giving more healthcare, more education, because they are having disease and they are dying more and more. The fact is proved that there are still much proportion of those black African, South African people than the whites. So the fact that the sport at the end of the day cannot fully, if you concentrate on sport solely, cannot fully solve the problem, even if it's united, the problem is dead. So they think it's ours then. At the end of the day, when the media perform its function, they can help, they can bring about attention of the society. And second of all, when the media can give the message to the people to know what's happening, we also think that it's also the individual responsibility. You can't just say, because all the factors in the society, they are involved in the problems. Let's say, for example, in the case of the Philippines, you cannot just say that, well, there are lots of homeless people, I don't care. I would just watch basketball because I love basketball. That is not something that individual should give the more proportion to. We think there's all these jobs that people should pay. Even there are these homeless. The government should do something. I don't just give a shit only about the basketball itself. We think that the government tell the government more contribution to these people and help them, ladies and gentlemen. That's how the voice of the people at the end of the day can help solving the problem by sending people. Third of all, on the government level, we think that the government should take the moral high ground. We think that the fact that the people give the consent to them to work, we think that they should first of all allow the check and balance. By the Italy case, that they will not allow media to open the floor and discuss. We think that the government will better function when you allow people at the end of the day to discuss, and they would not have the absolute power. They will be more careful and they will do something more carelessly, and at the end of the day will solve the problem because they want more popularity at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. So now, second of all, we think that it's not in the interest of the government at all just to serve the people. So we think that all in all, we think that they need to focus on the problem. It's not just about the media, it's about the budget. It's about the budget allocated to these people as well. It's about everything in the society as a whole, not just media. So concentrating on sport alone, how it's going to be better is that burden. Thank you very much.
Right, thank the speaker for his speech. And now invite second speaker for opposition, the deputy leader of opposition.
Speaker, sir, and respected members of this august house. This is primarily a debate about whether or not we should give high priority to sports in the national consciousness. The burden of proof, which ideally should have been coming from side government, was they had to show us that sports is not so important, they are not so important that they should not be prioritized by the state. We think that side government has fundamentally failed in discharging their burden of proof. Why do we think so? Because the fallacy in their case was they were making very vague assumptions and baseless arguments. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister comes up here and he says that sports is going to affect human security, it's going to affect national security. You can't say you didn't say, it's being recorded if you don't believe me. Mr. Speaker, they were vague. I asked them a POI, exactly how much are you going to give priority to sports? They were very vague. They did not exactly tell us how much are they going to prioritize sports, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, we think that the case on side government is fundamentally vague. I will take you in a moment. Please sit down. Mr. Speaker, they were talking about that if you are going to broadcast news on the sports, the message that you are going to give to the people is that there is nothing wrong with the economy. I really scratched my head to try to understand what that government was trying to say. You are going to broadcast news about sports, and how exactly is that going to show that the economy is in crisis? Does not make sense, right? They were talking about people will be negligent about poverty if you are going to broadcast news about sports. Any lame person will not understand what that government is going to say. You're going to talk about football, you're going to talk about cricket. How is that going to make people negligent about poverty? But even if, I assume what they were trying to say was that the news would be completely about sports. You're not going to talk about poverty, you're not talking about unemployment. But Mr. Speaker, the motion reads, this House will give high priority to sports, not the highest priority. We are not going to prioritize sports over national defense. We are not going to prioritize sports over other crucial sectors of the state where the government should be allocating resources, Mr. Speaker. My Prime Minister has shown you essentially why sports is so important that the state should be prioritizing it. Let me say it again, not highest priority, but a high priority. Now, then they were talking about that the economy is going, that it is going to lead to an economic downturn because AC Milan and such teams, they are going to, and the state, they spend loads on building stadiums and whatnot. What is the problem here? The problem here is that there is an economic meltdown. Now, the vague assumption that side government is making that the reason for this economic meltdown is because the government is spending much on sports. If you really knew something about Silvio Berlusconi, you know that he is a player. He is highly corrupted. He has run a corrupt government. If you really know something about Italy, Mr. Speaker, they would never have given the example of Italy. What exactly is the reason for the economic meltdown? It does not have to be the government spending much on sports. You have not shown us why the government is doing really well, and only because of spending in sports it is leading to an economic meltdown. What was the reason for the US financial meltdown? Was it because the US government was spending too much on sports? It was because of the banks. They're giving out so many loans, and finally the Fed had to give out a bailout. Nothing absolutely to do with sports. Mr. Speaker, let's see what the DP was coming about. The only thing he did was reiterate the arguments of the Prime Minister. They did not engage with what the PM was talking, what my LO was talking about, and they did not take it to the next level, Mr. Speaker. They were talking about national security should come first. Absolutely, we agree. The motion is not highest priority, it is a high priority. The government should be giving priority to other sectors as well. Before I move on, any POI?
Yes. So by talking about high priority, are you saying that by the word high that you're talking about is actually the lowest priority?
Mr. Speaker, I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. High priority, not highest priority. My LO is shown, and I will also be showing you why the state should be giving a high priority. Mr. Speaker, the functions of, they were talking about they're talking about there is a contradiction on this in this case, because the PM comes up here and says that in the media there is a system of checks and balances. But before that they said that we should not be broadcasting news about sports because people will be negligent about other issues. What do you want? A complete ban on sports or a system of checks and balances? I didn't really understand what they're trying to say by the thing about moral high ground, Mr. Speaker. Coming to my point, please sit down. We believe that it is important. We believe that there are high economic benefits from sports which cannot be compromised. Mr. Speaker, poor countries, when they host international tournaments, for instance South Africa, it brings them a lot of sponsorship. You have so many companies sponsoring, so many multinational companies sponsoring local teams, which we think helps to boost their economy. We think that it opens up employment opportunities. We think that the state should take a holistic approach to human resource development. Just like my university is sponsoring on debating, it should also be sponsoring on sports activities as well. Why so? Because we believe that we should not only focus on the intellectual part of our skills. We should not only be proud of people like Stephen Hawking, who despite being physically disabled are intellectually capable. We should also be proud of people who are physically fit, who have the physique, Mr. Speaker, because we think that both of them are essential human talents. Mr. Speaker, all of us are not equally talented. Some are intellectually, some physically. The state should appreciate and help to develop both. Like my PM said, it is an essential part of our culture, like painters, music, artists and music. We think that sports is also an essential part of culture. We believe that it opens up a whole new sector of economy. You have so many companies like Nike, Adidas, which provides employment opportunities. You have subjects like sports sciences, you have sports equipment and coaches, Mr. Speaker. We think that employment opportunities which really benefits the nation, which further adds on to national consciousness. Furthermore, we think that it is intrinsic for human development. Why? Even when we were not culturally developed, in ancient times, we had Olympics, because even then people understood that sports, it is an essential part of our human talent. That's why we think that it should be developed. It gives so many qualities: team spirit, competitiveness, the urge to develop better. On a second level, we think that it is liberation and greater recognition of stigmatized people. People like women like Sania Mirza in parts of the world where they are discriminated. Physically disabled people, we have special Olympics which show that even if they're physically handicapped, not only can they contribute intellectually like Stephen Hawking, they can also contribute physically as well. That's what Special Olympics was all about. That's why we on South Gulf side, the opposition are proud of this. Thank you.